Welcome to how to multiply and divide integers. Integers, whole numbers, negatives and positives. Multiply, divide, multiply, divide. Okay, cool. Let's start by writing the title. Multiply, we'll just do multiply first if that's okay with you. That's a lot to handle. Multiply integers. Okay? If you are unhappy with adding and subtracting integers, I think you're going to be happier with multiply divide integers because it's way easier. But I'm going to need your trust right now. Okay? Trust me. I'm going to give you the rules first. I'm going to explain why second. So, multiply divide. Okay, let's start with examples and we'll kind of write the rules alongside. Okay, I'm going to do what you already know. 2 times 3, write it down. What does that equal? 6. Okay? Is 2 a positive or negative number? I hope you said positive. Okay? 3, positive also. So when you take a positive times a positive, it gives you a positive or a negative? A positive. Okay? So this is what you already knew before we were talking about integers. You knew a positive times a positive is a positive. Okay? Now let's make one of these negative. 2 times negative 3. Okay? You're not going to do any different math. Okay, you're still going to take 2, you're still going to take 2 times 3, always. Okay, you just always multiply the numbers there. So 2 times 3 is still 6, but we need to figure out if this is really going to be positive or negative. So let's think about this first, okay? And I should use my eraser. Okay, so let's think about this first. So we know that multiplication is really a repeated addition, right? So if I have 2 times negative 3, I'm really saying I want negative 3 twice. Okay? Negative 3 twice. So if multiplication is repeated addition, this makes some logical sense that my answer will be negative 6. Okay? So I took a positive times a negative, and it gave me a negative. So there's your rule so far, okay? I'm not even going to bother with positive times positive is positive. I think you get that, okay? But negative times a positive is a negative, or a positive times a negative is a negative. So it actually doesn't matter if the 2 is negative, negative 2 times 3, or if the 3 is negative. Doesn't matter if the negative is first or second, same rule applies. I can kind of prove it to you if you want. So I got negative 2 3 times, repeated addition. Negative 2 plus negative 2 plus negative 2, okay? So I could also say a negative times a positive is a negative, okay? So maybe I'll kind of underline the rules, okay? So the rules are in red here. It doesn't matter which one's first. If something is a negative, if one of them is a negative, the answer is negative. Okay. How about if they're both negative? Okay, so we're going to take negative 2 times negative 3. Okay, the rest made some logical sense. Okay, the rest made some logical sense. This isn't quite as much logical sense yet. You're going to have to hold on if you want some logical sense. Okay, but I'm just going to tell you the rule, and I'll explain why later. So here's where I need your trust. Okay. We know that it's going to be 6, and I need you to know that it's a positive 6. Okay, so right now I'm going to write down the rule first. So if we have a negative times a negative, that gives me a positive. Okay, a negative times a negative is a positive. And so it's hard to make some logical sense out of this at first, but I promise I will in my next video. Okay, negative times a negative is a positive. Negative times a positive is a negative. So if one of them is negative, it's negative. If they're both negative, it's like they cancel each other out and you get a positive. If they're both negative, it's like you cancel each other out and that you get a positive. Okay? All right, so let's try a few examples. Example 1. Write this down. You're going to do it. Example 1 is 12 times negative 4. Example 2 is 7 times 3. Example 3 is negative 5 times negative 10. Okay? Look what I did here. You can't see me. Okay, look what I did here. I'm trying to bring back something I already taught you. I told you that there's different ways to write multiplication besides just an X. There's different ways to write multiplication. We talked about this, but we don't see it enough to always remember. If it's right next to a parentheses, that means multiplication. So I'm going to start giving you problems like this, and you need to say, oh yeah, that's multiplication, no problem. Don't get scared. Just remember, if you don't see an operation, it's right next to a parentheses, that's multiplication. Remember, a dot is also multiplication, not a decimal. When it's written up a little higher, that's multiplication. Or if you have two parentheses next to each other, that's also multiplication. So when you're looking at these, you should be thinking 12 times -4. 7 times 3 with an X, or -5 times -10. Those are all the same things. All the same things. Go ahead and write the answer. Pause here and write the answer. Okay. So for the first one, you're just going to do the regular multiplication, right? The regular multiplication. So that should give us 48. And since 4 is negative, only one of them is negative, the answer is negative 48. Example 2 was a test. It was a trick. It was making sure you get it. Obviously, this is what you did before we started talking about integers. 7 times 3, 21. Okay? Last one here. 5 times 10 is 50. Is that going to be positive or negative 50? Well, two negatives, negative times negative, gives me a positive 50. All done. Okay? So just to summarize, okay, a positive times a negative equals a negative. A negative times a negative equals a positive. They kind of cancel each other out. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to do division in a second video just to make it easier. Okay, see you back in a second.